Let's watch a video by two guys who I guess are doctors of something somewhere, in which they try to convince you to not be too hasty in reclaiming your health on your own terms.
But what we are talking about today is this carnivore diet that is very popular and has a bunch of issues with it that honestly is going to create a lot of controversy because these people are very passionate.
Passionate about what? Curing food addiction? Avoiding preventable disease? Fighting obesity? The nerve of people being passionate about not needing us for more than a yearly checkup.
I think anyone who has an extreme diet is passionate.
100%.
If you're like carnivore,
keto, vegan.
Yeah. The main difference is most people try keto for health purposes. They see improvements that have been verified with research. If I'm not mistaken, they quit not because of health, but because they never got help for the underlying issues that led them to have health problems in the first place. Food addiction, for example. The vegan diet, on the other hand, looks good on paper, but fails miserably in practice, the negative results of which are also verified through research. People quit mostly because of health failure, and the ones who try to stick it out do so usually because they are passionate about not saving animals really, but it feeds their sense of self-satisfaction, or because they're passionate about making money, or sometimes both. Conflating the two so flippantly as medical professionals is doing wonders for your credibility so far.
Yeah.
Whatever, you name it.
You don't see people coming, I am so passionate about a balanced diet. It just doesn't happen. People who go into these extreme diets.
It's like a religion.
Really are passionate
Zealots.
about it.
Maybe it's because taking a carnivore and feeding it an omnivorous diet makes them sick? Why promote something that makes you sick?
Carnivore diet consists of eating animal products primarily, if not only.
Yeah, so the strictest form is truly only animal products.
That's right.
So that means no plants, no fruits, no vegetables, no nuts, no seeds, nothing. Just animal products.
Okay. It
seems like a good idea.
It seems obvious that it's not a good idea. I mean, I spent so many years telling my kids to eat their vegetables. I never thought I'd have to say it again now that they've grown up and they have kind of good eating habits, but here we are.
Right.
I will admit the carnivore diet seemed laughable to me at first too, because I, like most people, found myself convinced that people need plants. I hadn't known anything about just how new most of the plants we eat now are, just how inedible they are in their natural form, just how toxic they really are no matter what form, and just how insufficient they are at providing us with nutrition compared with meat. I also didn't realize just how nutritious animal products actually are, and I had bought into the idea that saturated fat and cholesterol were bad for people. Now I know that there's no research that actually backs that up. So looking deeper at these things and learning more about humans and nutrition and doing some experimentation led me towards the carnivore lifestyle. I can't wait to hear what these two guys in scrubs have to add to the conversation.
So there are some wild animals and other animals that are obligate carnivores. We are not them.
I find this interesting. I didn't think humans were carnivores either. I thought very one-dimensionally about it. Can humans eat meat and plants? Yes? Then duh, they're omnivores. But what exactly is a carnivore? What is an omnivore? Let's look at the definitions as provided by Encyclopedia Britannica. According to this definition, it seems there are some things that preclude us from being carnivores. For example, we don't necessarily have sharp teeth or claws. I find this very curious because there are plants that are considered carnivorous, yet they don't have those. The digestive process seems to describe humans partially. Humans can eat the soft bone of smaller animals, yes. Humans are not very good at converting beta-carotene into vitamin A, so we are carnivores and yet we're not carnivores. Okay, let's look at the omnivore definition. When it says, unless there is no other practical source of B12, I find this very curious. If you take a human and you place them in the world with no help from modern science, this human can use its brain and body to fashion weapons, attack and kill animals, and obtain B12. Do you know what this human would be unable to do? Synthesize B12 in a lab, or go to the supermarket to get nutritional yeast? In the case of excluding humans from being carnivores, it's somehow because we create the tools that serve as the teeth and claws for us to rip into the flesh of an animal. So, are we counting artificial means or not? Also, I've seen humans rip the skin off of small animals with their hands and teeth. It goes on to say that we have active bacterial flora and that we can absorb short-chain fatty acids, but it also says that we can absorb vitamins. From what I understand, we absorb them predominantly in the small intestine, but there is still production and absorption of vitamins in the large intestine. Does that mean we're not omnivores? It's almost like we don't fit this category perfectly either. So why do I say that we're carnivores? It's mostly for the aforementioned reason. Any given species has a diet it can survive off of with or without human intervention, and that includes humans themselves. If we have to supplement the diet using vitamins acquired by modern technology, that would mean there could possibly be humans on the planet who could not survive only on plants. But if you take that same human and you give them animal products, salt and water, they would be able to survive. No fancy equipment or excavation methods required. I respect that there's more to it than this, but it doesn't change the fact that we're not necessarily carnivores and we're not necessarily omnivores. When it comes to thriving, having the most bioavailable source of any given nutrient is key. I suppose good health, longevity, comfort, among other things, are not counted when considering what a carnivore is or what an omnivore is. It matters to me. I think it matters to cats too and dogs. Humans feed them food bulked up with plant matter and watch them get sick and die of preventable disease and just chalk it up to nature as though it's nature's fault. Newsflash, it's not. It's ours. Not only when it happens to them, but when it happens to us too. There's just a little bit too much normalized suffering going on in our quote-unquote omnivorous world. Suffering that we find is alleviated when plants are taken out of the equation.
So the thought behind this diet is talking about our ancestors way back, who knows even how many, 10,000 or whatever million years ago that you think.
LOL, evolution, am I right?
How they ate high-fat, high-protein diets. And some fossil studies have shown that maybe this is true, but other studies have clearly shown they actually did eat a fair number of plants. But the reason that
they lived to 32.
Yeah, that's right, because you're being chased by like a dinosaur or whatever, if you believe that.
Okay, so I guess these guys are kind of cracking jokes in between, but I honestly can't tell the parts where they're being facetious and the parts where they're being serious, because first of all, they're not funny, and second of all, the subject matter is not funny. There's a common theme in these talks, and that is that what is natural is not always good, and what is unnatural is not always bad. Modern medicine is something that 100% allows us to live longer than we used to be able to live. We can treat diseases, we can prevent diseases, we can keep people alive even when they're brain dead. Life in our modern world, with the exception of ill-meaning humans, is relatively safe compared to those who must brave the wild. I don't think people were dying at 32 because they didn't have enough plants. On the contrary, even as we're able to keep each other alive longer, we're still dying unnecessarily young because we have an abundance of plants. Say what you will about processed food, the majority of it is plants.
What it means is that these people did not have food security. So when you found an animal or you happened to kill an animal by hunting, you ate as much as you could because you didn't know when your next meal was coming. Mm-hmm. And usually what was available were animals. There was not regular farming. There were not industrialized farm practices. There were not stores where you could go buy food. Like nowadays, we have unlimited access to food. So this is one of the arguments that, hey, our ancestors do it, maybe we should do it.
Wow. He really is suggesting that it was because we didn't have enough plants. What other animal in this world has to make their own food? Just work through this with me. He showed a refrigerator completely filled with man-made plants. Plants that, if we had not bred into existence, we apparently would not be able to exist without. You know, the ones that clog our arteries, the ones that cause our teeth to rot, the ones that are causing us to not be as tall as we used to be or have as big a brain as we used to have, the ones that cause disruption in our gut bacteria, and that are basically the reason for rampant mental illness in the first world. You mean the ones with the inferior nutrition in comparison to meat, the ones that cause all the gut issues, those. You mean the ones that have toxins that prevent us from being able to absorb what little nutrition they do have, that cause inflammation in the body, that cause kidney stones, that cause gout, and a host of other completely avoidable issues many people suffer with today. You know, the ones that keep people like you in business, I guess. Well, they didn't introduce themselves other than their names, so I have no idea what they're doctors of. They could be cosplaying for all they are giving me reason to believe.
So, but the modern day carnivore is drawn to the carnivore diet because they may have seen some immediate results of, hey, this is really working. I'm losing weight. I'm trying this carnivore diet. I'm feeling good. I'm losing weight.
Doctor, far be it from me to school you on anything, but even just simply based on the comments that I see, people mention a multitude of results, which means they're coming from a standpoint of not just obesity, but also overall health. Many of them will state the reason why it's so easy for them to stick to it, or the reason why they're so motivated to stick to it, is because of how great it makes them feel overall. They didn't realize just how sick they felt before. They didn't know just how well it would resolve life-threatening illnesses that they used to have, but they no longer have. I would think that something like this would mean something to you, doctor.
Why is that?
Okay, so yeah, definitely it's popular with the gym bros and the gym bro science and people really trying to increase their muscle mass because of the protein content. The reason that it has potential to help early on is for a bunch of reasons. So one, when you eat a diet that's very restrictive, regardless of what it is, chances are your calories are going to go down. So
elimination, you're eliminating other foods.
Yeah, so you reduce the calories, so this can show weight benefits.
In what universe are we limiting calories? Some of us are eating more calories than we usually eat and yet still lose weight. Fat is incredibly calorically dense, and it makes up most of what a carnivore will eat. I've seen some of the sizes of the steaks that people eat. I've seen the number of eggs and amount of butter that they eat. You can just look at it and know that they are not necessarily restricting calories. A carnivore diet is not about calories, it's about nutrition, which every diet should be about.
But when you eliminate these other foods, you're eliminating a whole bunch of things. You're eliminating anything from a box, which we would say you should do anyway. So highly processed foods. You're eliminating highly refined grains. You're eliminating sugary snacks as well as drinks. So these things we've talked about all the time.
Good things to eliminate.
They're good things to eliminate, and that might be part of why you feel better.
These foods are finally starting to make some sense.
The other thing is when you eliminate all those other things, you may have some things that you had subtle intolerances or potentially allergies to that you weren't aware of.
You know, I wasn't really willing to go in on any kind of conspiracy theory because I just assumed that these are just two guys giving their educated opinion on the internet. But the fact that when they're talking about food allergies or intolerances that one can encounter, but in the context of a carnivore diet, they have the nerve to show milk or cream and cheese. Why don't you show oxalate-laden spinach, a common cause of kidney stones? Why not show nightshades such as tomatoes and potatoes? A common cause of inflammation and gut issues. Or even gluten, which the average person could immediately recognize as an allergen that people on a carnivore diet would not have a problem encountering. I'm going to reserve judgment and keep watching, but I won't forget.
But now removed, so you're like, oh, you know what? My stomach feels a little bit better. I'm a little bit less inflamed, whatever. There's a lot of potential benefits of these elimination style diets, but it's really, you're just eliminating everything. So it's going to ease your gut. And some people say that things like leaky gut and your gut microbiome can improve when you do this initially.
And why would that be, Mr. Genius Doctor? The foods that you guys think people should eat, I'm assuming fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, are the very foods that cause those problems. So of course, not eating them would alleviate, if not eliminate, those problems. The interesting thing about the availability of food today is even when we try to breed these toxins out of these foods, we're not always successful, but we have them in such abundance that we can overdose on these toxins very easily. Even if some people want to argue that a little bit of plant matter every now and again is okay, is that what is pushed on us by health professionals? Not these guys. Making it seem like they should play a major role in a person's diet and then laughing off the fact that people are suffering from the issues they cause is irredeemably irresponsible.
All right, here's why it's not good for you.
Okay.
First of all, you could actually be, in a way, malnutritioned because you're missing out on a lot of essential vitamins and other nutrients that you just can't get from only animal products. Vitamin C, for example.
So theoretically, you could develop scurvy. A lot of these do take a long time to develop, so early on, you're not going to have signs of most of these micronutrient or phytochemical deficiencies.
Right.
This video came out quite recently. I would expect that these doctors are keeping up with the literature. There's a scientific reason why the average person undertaking a carnivore diet should not be expected to develop scurvy. The requirement for vitamin C is different when you're not consuming carbohydrates. It's actually quite low. This is what I'm talking about when I want to highlight the difference between an animal that is omnivorous and carnivorous. I would expect that if an omnivore eats plants, those plants won't prevent them from reaping the benefits of the animal parts they eat and vice versa. I mentioned before that plants are the reason for problems with our arteries. This is because of the presence of excess sugar in the body. We don't have any evidence of saturated fat causing problems on its own, nor cholesterol, but we have theories that show us how the presence of completely extraneous nutrients such as carbs, and this includes fiber, can cause calamity, but we wind up blaming fat and cholesterol. These phytonutrients you mentioned, those are included too, but we have to eat something. I'll give them another chance to see if they can come up with a reason why we should eat nothing, because animal products are also bad for us on their own somehow.
So you're missing out on a host of essential vitamins and nutrients that you're not going to get just from the animal product.
Right. So that's one.
Oh, hell no. They had the nerve to say there were a host of things we were missing out on, and they could only mention one? And that one is not even a legitimate concern for the average human being?
The second one is if you have existing kidney disease, that protein load can be very dangerous for you. Obviously, most people do not have kidney disease, but if you have borderline kidney function or kidney damage, this amount of protein definitely is a problem.
Okay, this sounds like responsible messaging. Maybe you're not irredeemable after all, Scrubs.
Another thing is if you're like me and your body has a problem with cholesterol,
okay,
and you make too much cholesterol, or your cholesterol levels are a little bit high, or you have a family history of high cholesterol, a heavy animal-based diet will increase your cholesterol levels.
Right, because of the often obligatory amounts of saturated fats. And there is controversy as to how much saturated fat is going to increase your levels of LDL or the bad cholesterol, and it's linked to heart disease. We have videos about this. But generally speaking, this has been shown to increase your risk of cardiovascular disease.
Yeah. And the problem is that, I mean, that is well shown. The increased cholesterol, increased LDL, that will increase your risk of heart disease.
Yes.
Where the controversy comes in is if you take medicines to reduce that, are you going to live longer?
I thought he was going to say the controversy was in whether or not, if you have a low-carb diet or a no-carb diet, does saturated fat or cholesterol continue to be problematic? I mean, they're technically not problematic at all, and they're super necessary for major functions in the body. Carbs, on the other hand.
And I'm fine, I can accept those controversies, but it's irrefutable that these high levels are linked to heart disease.
Decades of solid research, regardless of how you feel about Big Pharma.
And just who was this research done on? Was it done on people who are not on low-carb diets? Because if that's the case, it seems inconsequential to the carnivore diet discussion. Also, there's a difference between having heart disease and being at risk of the negative outcomes that we typically associate with people with heart disease. As with all things health-related, it's holistic. Environment and genetics play a big role in determining what a person will develop over time. I also want to take this opportunity to mention that having high LDL is not the death sentence we once thought it was. It matters a lot, the quality of the LDL, and if I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. Cholesterol does not corrupt itself. So what causes bad cholesterol? What is the relationship between rampantly high levels of blood sugar and cholesterol? I wonder.
Okay, another issue with the carnivore diet is an issue with constipation. Unfortunately, if you're a diet that has essentially zero fiber, constipation is going to become a very big problem. And that amount of, they believe the combination of protein, lack of fiber, increases your risk of colon cancer quite specifically.
Is this another one of your theories? Like the scurvy thing? By the way, I don't know who needs to know this, but a carnivore diet is not necessarily focused on protein. You're supposed to also eat a good amount of fat. Not only does animal fat have vitamins, it also serves as a rather efficient fuel source for humans. It causes only mild insulin spikes, which makes me very curious as to why we keep blaming it and cholesterol for problems in the arteries. I think it also helps keep people regular. We have normalized digestive issues such as bloating, gas, diarrhea, and even constipation. This is basically what fiber does to you. To say that it bulks up your stool is basically saying that you're going to poop out most of what you ate, which means you'll have problems absorbing the vitamins you ate. For all the talk of having a good balance on an omnivorous diet, the same is true for carnivores. You do have to be careful to stay hydrated. You have to be careful to watch your mineral balance. And you do have to watch the fat to protein ratio. If it's not a demerit of the omnivore diet, then it's not a demerit of the carnivore diet.
So the other thing is anti-aging properties. So a lot of people who believe in the carnivore diet will say that there are chemicals in plants that actually are bad for you, that plants have devised a way to have these chemicals to make them less appealing to animals.
Yeah, just don't eat poison ivy.
Right, so having said that though, these are the exact same compounds that have been shown to reverse aging or reduce aging, like resveratrol, things like in grapes and other plants.
Everybody ages. There is a normal rate of aging, and then there's accelerated aging. What is causing the accelerated aging? Is it plants? Is it another plant toxin? Is it the rampant insulin spikes caused by plants? Is it the inflammation also caused by plants? What does the body need to produce new cells? What prevents the body from proper replication of these cells? Is it something you find in a plant? Let's remember that plants are entirely extraneous. There's not a single plant a human needs to eat, not one. But we need to eat something. Animal protein is the most bioavailable form of protein. Animal fat is not only nutritious, but it is also necessary for basic functions in the body. Dietary cholesterol can help make up for cholesterol because the average body doesn't produce all the cholesterol that it needs. All of these things are required for a body to do its basic things. None of these things, when they're all able to work in conjunction with one another, causes problems in the body. If there are no problems being caused, there's no need for a solution. I'm really struggling here. I'm really struggling to find out why we keep poisoning ourselves and then convincing ourselves to use a different poison to try to alleviate the problems of the original poison that we consumed. Oh, garlic and ginger help reduce inflammation. Wait, why am I inflamed again? Is it because of another plant that I ate? Why did I eat those tomatoes? Oh, I heard tomatoes were high in lycopene or something. Isn't that supposed to be good for me? And wait, why does my stomach hurt? Is it because the garlic I ate trying to reduce the inflammation from the tomatoes I ate is burning a literal hole in my stomach? I guess I should have cooked it more, to reduce the toxins. What animal on earth needs to cook its food? I am so tired of this, I don't even know what to say.
So that whole rationale of don't eat plants because we're not supposed to, or not designed to eat plants, totally breaks down on a scientific level. The last thing that I would say about the carnivore diet is, if you go to the National Library of Congress database, where all randomized controlled trials and published medical literature exists, there are 0 studies on the carnivore diet. There are lots of studies about carnivore diet in dogs,
right,
in cats, in other obligate carnivores, but we are not them.
You know how there's literally no long-term research done on vegan diets, and yet you'll find some people, even doctors, promoting it as though it's incredibly healthy based on theory, just because it looks good on paper? Basically, what these so-called experts do is they look at shoddy research, some of which are just flat-out lies, and they say, oh, saturated fat and cholesterol were associated with bad things, so it must be good to cut them out completely. Oh, whole grains were associated with something positive, so it must be good to eat more of those. Oh, fruits and vegetables have lots of vitamins and minerals, so it must be better to eat more of those. This is precisely what people on the carnivore side are doing. We see that there's science that backs up the fact that some of these foods are incredibly toxic for us, and that's why we feel terrible when we eat them, so we decide to stop eating them. We see that we don't actually have research that criticizes or definitely pinpoints red meat, saturated fat, and cholesterol as being bad on their own. And we discover, hey, these things are actually really good for our bodies, so let's start eating those again. It's an experiment to be sure, but it's not such a stretch of the imagination to see why it would be working for so many people.
There are no studies. And so a couple things. In general, diet research, food-based research, supplement research is not very well done because it's complicated, it's expensive, and it's easier just to release something and say something and start propagating.
And yet you seem to be incapable of understanding why people are willing to take matters into their own hands to reclaim their health.
But there's no data. So if you are a carnivore lover and you really love the carnivore, please organize a randomized control trial and please show us somehow that A, it's going to help in the short term, but B, more importantly, the long term. This is my big fear for these people. If you do it for a month and you lose 20 pounds and you feel better, great. But 20 years from now, your risk of heart disease and cancer and other medical problems are going to be very significant.
You literally just said you have no research, so how the hell can you know that that's the case? The information that you're basing your ideas on are from people who have a mixed diet. If there's one thing you take away from this video, it should be that carbohydrates, and I didn't mention it before, but I will now, industrial seed oils are the reasons why we have these problems. A carnivore diet basically completely cuts them out, as well as any potential complications from plant toxins. Without the introduction of the things that tend to cause problems, why be so worried that problems will occur? It just doesn't seem like a reasonable expectation to me.
So we're not going to tell you what to eat and what not to eat. We're just reviewing some of the literature about the carnivore diet and some of the implications of it. If you're thinking of going down that road, you really should know this stuff that we just talked about.
Make sure you bring some Metamucil if you are going down that road. And then the last thing I would say is
shill.
Be careful of people that promote this diet, because throughout YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and all these platforms, a lot of people are selling you stuff.
After he just told you to buy some Metamucil, this is rich.
So beware someone that's selling you a book or that's selling you a supplement. And if you have to take a ton of supplements to deal with your crazy diet, maybe it's not a good diet.
So are you acknowledging that people are just trying to sell people something, or do you think that people will really need them?
Not a crazy. I'm not a big fan of diets in general,
right.
But I think you should have a good diet.
Yes.
In general. But yeah, I mean, really educate yourself well before you embark on this type of lifestyle eating.
Why don't you follow your own advice?
And we're not sponsored by anybody, so what people eat doesn't really matter to us.
I really didn't need to hear you say so blatantly how little you care about the health of your fellow man, you quack.
I thought you were sponsored by kale.
No, I'm a self-promoter of kale. I'm not sponsored per se.
The bully of all green leafy vegetables.
It doesn't have to be a bully. Science just shows that it's good for you.
I have a feeling this guy would eat wood chips if somebody told him it was good for him.
I read that how we learned that we could eat kale was someone who was walking through a kale field, cut themselves on the kale, and bit it out of anger and said, hey, we can actually eat this.
Yeah, no, that's not true at all. But the chicken wing.
The chicken wing. We are trying to get sponsored by the chicken wing.
No, we are not. You maybe are.
Honey garlic, barbecue, dry rub.
Sugar junkie.
There you go. We're not sponsored by anybody. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe to our channel, even if you don't like this video. Leave a comment, tell us your experience with either the carnivore diet or someone you know who's on the carnivore diet.
And just don't believe everything you see on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok.
That's us. Yeah.
Never mind.
Don't believe the hype. Public Enemy said it best.
You are in charge of your own health.
We'll see you next time.
That's actually the perfect message to end on. It's the opposite of what he said before, but whatevs. If you watched this far, thank you so much for sticking in there with me, despite all my rambling. I hope to see you again in another video, and as always, be having a good day.